Hey, Paul here for Retro Gaming Arts, and today I want to talk about why it's so much fun to collect for Sega. And if you've seen like any of my videos before, you'll probably notice that I'm a huge PlayStation fan. And if you haven't, I'm a huge PlayStation fan. It's my favorite console, PS1. All the games on it. I don't want to get into it because today we're going to be talking about why Sega's fun. And if you're a PlayStation fan, and if you're a Nintendo fan, but you find collecting for Sega fun too, let me know. And I think it's really unique because Sega has different things going on for it that maybe these other consoles didn't really have, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It's mainly three main things, and the three main things that makes collecting for Sega so much fun is all the hardware that they had. You can mod all of that hardware, and then the games, because Sega was kind of the underdog. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But as for the hardware, I have almost all of Sega's hardware. There's a few that I'm missing, like all the Japanese variations and then the NOMAD. Other than, and like there's like the Sega Pico I don't have either. But for the most part, these are all the main Sega consoles that I want and I enjoy. And it's the Master System, the Genesis, the Game Gear, 32X, Sega CD, Saturn, and Dreamcast. There's so much hardware. There's so many different hardware, so there's so many different games to collect, and a lot of this hardware didn't have that many games. So it makes you have to search out for the games, and that's what's fun about collecting for so much hardware, is that you don't, for PlayStation for instance, for my PlayStation 1 collection, in order to collect for it, I need a lot of games, because there's a lot of great games for it. And there's a lot of games that cater to exactly what I like. I like being able to collect for something that there's much less games that I need for. That's what makes it fun. At least for me. I don't know how you guys feel, but let me know how you feel about that. Sega's consoles are all very moddable. And what I mean by that is, so Sega was originally an arcade manufacturer. They made arcades, they made arcade games first, and then brought their arcade games home. And that was the whole goal, and the purpose was to give you the arcade home, in the home. Even though no matter, Neo Geo did it best kind of thing, but Sega still did it. And what's awesome about the Sega consoles is every single one of them does SCART output natively. So you get the best video quality natively. All you need is a way to plug in a SCART cable and a SCART cable for them. So that is awesome. You can play any of these consoles in SCART. Now, getting a whole SCART setup is expensive though. Every single cable is pretty expensive. If you want to go the FrameMeister or an upscaler box, either way, they're still pretty expensive. And then you need switchers if you have a lot of Sega consoles. So to have a whole SCART gaming setup, I have a couple set up in SCART, but for the most part, to have a lot in SCART, it's a whole thing that you have to go and do. So if you don't want to go and get a whole RGB gaming setup, you can do simple mods to the Sega consoles to still increase the video quality or video image clarity significantly without having to go and spend a lot of money on all of the RGB components that you will need. And that is, you can SVideo mod the Sega Master System, the Sega Genesis, the Sega 32X, and then the Dreamcast and the Saturn do SVideo natively. I play all my consoles in SVideo except for the few in SCART, and it's like a budget RGB gaming setup. An SVideo gaming setup is a budget version of a SCART gaming setup. So that's what's nice. And you can also, to these consoles, so I said which ones you can SVideo mod. You can, all right, here we go. Off the top of my head, all the Sega consoles and all the mods that I can think of off the top of my head. Master System, SVideo mod, FM sound chip mod, 50-60 Hertz, region mod. Genesis, same exact list of mods minus the FM sound chip, but you can get an amp for the Sega Genesis and amplify the sound on your Genesis. You can also overclock the Genesis. Sega 32X, you can SVideo mod. And then the Sega CD gets buffs from all the Genesis mods because you need to plug in the Sega CD to the Genesis to play them together. So you'll play your Sega CD games in SVideo or in SCART, whatever it may be. Now for the Saturn, you can region mod it so you can play import games, because the Saturn's library in Japan is amazing. The fighting games they got in Japan, we got the same ones in America, but they weren't as good, and some of them we didn't. Up to the Dreamcast, every single console can be region modded so you can play all the games from other countries, and then you can improve the image clarity one of two ways: SCART route or SVideo route. And then we have the Dreamcast, which can then be VGA modded, and it looks so good. It's amazing. You can also region mod it so you can play burn games or games from other countries. The Sega CD, you can... There is no copyright protection on the Sega CD. You can just burn a game and just put it in a Sega CD and it just works. So you can go that route. You don't need to mod Sega CD to do that. So with all of them doing SCART output, or a simple mod for SVideo, or just doing SVideo. Dreamcast does SVideo, Saturn does SVideo natively, don't need to mod it. The older consoles really get the benefit from SVideo modding, and then the Dreamcast from VGA modding. And you don't even need to mod it to do VGA. You can just get a VGA box, and it looks so good. So with all of that, that's a huge thing, because now you have so much choices. There's so many things you can do to all these older consoles for Sega, and that's another reason why collecting for Sega is so much fun, is because the capabilities you can unlock. Alright, now let's talk games. I briefly mentioned that having less games for more consoles is fun. I don't know what that is, but there's something about it that's really fun, to have a smaller library for a little console than having a huge library for a huge console. I don't know, I get enjoyment out of that. I get enjoyment out about knowing that there's 5 games that I have for a Sega console, and I love all 5 of them so much, and I can play them as often as I want, as little as I want, for however long that I want. There's something about having less games that makes you appreciate them more. I don't know if that's it. Maybe that's it just for me. Because if I had more games, I would still appreciate them equally. So I don't know. But there's something about Sega where I feel like I don't need a lot of games for the Sega to be content with collecting for it. I'm not sure. Pretty sure it's something like that. And because Sega was always the underdog, except for the Dreamcast and the Genesis. If you think about the Sega Master System, I never heard about the Master System because everybody had a Nintendo. Well, with the Genesis, I never heard about the Super Nintendo because everybody I knew either had a Genesis or a Nintendo. So those were the only 2 that I heard about at that era. But I mean, everybody's different. Everybody had different neighbors. All my neighbors had an original Nintendo. Nobody had a Sega, so I had never heard about it. So it was the underdog. So you can get gently better graphics than a Nintendo on the Sega Master System for a console that I didn't hear about when it came out. Some people did, some people didn't. So it's nice to go back and revisit and explore. You get to explore older games that you didn't hear about, more so with Sega consoles than other consoles. And that's why I think collecting for the games is fun for Sega. There's a lot of things that I didn't know about that Sega did game-wise, and going back and finding those and learning about those and enjoying those is what's awesome. And the Dreamcast is another example where they weren't the underdog. 32X, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, all underdogs. The Sega CD was the biggest of those. The Saturn did extremely well in Japan, but didn't do so well here in America. PlayStation just mopped the floor with that whole thing. But the Dreamcast came out way before PS1, or PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. And it was amazing. It was mind-blowing. It was the first to have graphics like that. It blew all of our minds. And you know it blew yours. It blew everybody's. The Dreamcast was huge. but it was short-lived. It only had a 2-year run. And because of it being short-lived and it being so awesome, you want to enjoy more of it. So you go out and you search for all these other games and you get to play so many more. And I think that's a huge thing. And even for after Sega's life as a hardware manufacturer, they're still making games. All the games that were going to be on the Dreamcast, we got on the Xbox. They just went to the Xbox, and you get to play these awesome Sega games for Xbox. PlayStation 3 has some killer Sega games on it. So they're still making games. I'm not actually personally a fan of all the new Sonics that they came out with. But still, they're still making other games instead of just running off of their big, huge mascot for 30 years. I don't know why these companies do that. Obviously, it works and people love it, so that's why they do it. But I like finding those other games that were less popular, less known about, but still made by Sega. And that's why collecting for them is so much fun. You have a lot of hardware, excellent mod options for this hardware, and then you can upgrade every single one's video quality. Every single one you can upgrade the video quality. And I didn't even talk about the Game Gear, the NOMAD with the LCD screens and the battery mods, but you can do all that. Game Gear is a whole new world of mods. And so yeah, what do you guys think? Did you guys, do you agree with any of this? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think. What do you think about Sega? Do you like Nintendo? Tell me all of that stuff. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.